My name is Stephanie Fender. I am one of the Coveros training and consulting client advocates. I help our customers and our team deliver successful training engagements.
Hi, I'm Byron Katz. I'm one of the trainers at Coveros.
Hi, I'm
Good,
Jenna Charlton. I'm also a trainer at Coveros.
good morning, everyone. My name is Sam Jeantel, and I partner with Stephanie in the training and consulting engagements here at Coveros.
What a great. So let's talk a little bit about, the different aspects, the benefits of a private training course.
Yeah. Well, at least for my part, when I start each class, I take a significant piece of time at the beginning just to introduce myself, to come up with some personal information just so that I build that bridge from my side. And then I ask them to talk about themselves. And while doing so, I find out where they're at, where they're hoping to be. And then I mention to them, yeah, this class is going to be tailored to your needs. So if you're already at a higher level of sophistication, we're going to start there. If you're mostly very new, we're going to take our time more on some of the fundamental parts. But each class is different. I never teach the same class twice, so that's just part of the package that we deliver.
It's really important to me that same thing, like when we do the introduction, not only do they know who I am, but I get to know who they are a little bit. So I'm really intentional about doing some icebreakers and like silly kinds of things that warm people up to the idea of talking in this environment that they might feel really uncomfortable talking in, and to let them know that like I'm not here to lecture at them. I'm here to partner with them. Like that's the point, right? We're there to partner and guide them through all of these things that they're here to learn. But part of it is them kind of teaching each other and sharing experiences and having those really good conversations about this is what happened in my team, or this is what happened on this project, and other people hearing that and having thoughts on it and getting an opportunity to give them some perspective or some context as well. So it's all about like the community that we create in the classroom.
Yeah, and on that point, that brings up, I think, a really good idea that when it comes to private classes, it's just your company. So you can speak freely about things knowing who the audience is, and you can hone in on ideas that your team feels are important to bring up without concern about that getting out to any other part of the world. That you can go through these concepts together as a team.
Like a trust tree.
Mm.
We've been doing virtual delivery, virtual learning for 10 plus years. It's just right now we're doing all virtual instead of, a blended approach or an in-person engagement.
Yeah. On a recent class, I was asked whether it was a lot different now in this situation, and I was saying, well, yes, on regular occasion I used to travel there and I do like being in person a lot, but we're very accustomed to working remote, and so this isn't so much of a difference for us. It's just all remote now.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely miss face-to-face interaction. There are different kinds of experiences we can create in a classroom when we are physically together than the kinds of experiences we create when we're virtual. However, I found a lot of ways to take some of those kind of physical in the room sort of things that I would do if we were in person and translate them to the virtual environment. And there are some benefits to virtual too. Like we're better able to demonstrate tools, and we're better able to just reach out, and grab things from our, virtual bag of tricks, so to speak. From our machines. So there's trade-offs and there's but there's some real positives too. And we didn't have to pivot when this happened. We were already set up for it.
One of the things that I'd like to touch upon this morning is in regards to the tuning and tailoring of the courses that we do for private training. Stephanie and I work closely with both Jenna and Byron in setting up pre-class calls so that we have a better understanding of the objectives and the strategic goals of the groups. So Jenna and Byron, if you could speak to the type of questions that you typically would ask so that you have a better understanding going into those training engagements.
So I think the questions I ask partly have to do with the class that we're teaching. I'm going to ask different questions about an Agile class than I'm going to ask about a software testing skills class. If we're talking about, say, CTFL, the ISTQB Foundations class, I'm going to ask a lot of questions about the experience level of the testers that are going to be in the class, what the range is, because you usually get a broad range, people who are just starting out to people who maybe are even manager level but never took a certification. When it comes to Agile, I like to ask about what Agile practices they currently have, how far are they in their Agile transformation, if they've started that yet, and what have they socialized out and what is still to be discovered in their Agile processes and kind of where they are, so I can meet them where they are.
It seems to just resonate more with the students when you customize and, as Sam mentioned, tune and tailor, the content that you may see on our website. So just keep that in mind when you are reviewing or researching what courses you want to bring to your company. Lots of great information out there that our Coveros, instructors and team can tune and tailor the content to specifically meet your needs.
And one other part that I might mention is sometimes someone at a company will be looking through our course catalog and won't find it exactly what they want. It will be close, but not quite. And then maybe they'll see a few that are, I want a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We have tailored it for them in the past. We have said, okay, you want some fundamentals of testing, but you also want some automation? We can do that for you quite easily. So that's always an option. Not to mention that when people are coming in at different levels, we've had clients who have a more sophisticated capability in, for example, Selenium. We're happy to start wherever you are and then go up from there. If I'm hearing a lot of concern about a particular point, usually it's a company-wide thing and we'll focus on that. Whereas if it's just like a public, different people are coming from different places and you don't have that kind of consistency of need. So it just turns every class from a kind of off the
shelf.
Yeah, it becomes tailored for each group. And if it's private, it's much more on target.
Great.
And very often when we're teaching some entire group by project or something like that, and they might be scattered all over the United States or even the world. And this is one of the opportunities for them to have a forum together to talk about something that matters to them, where they've almost got a facilitator to get out some of the ideas that they've really been wanting to discuss. It's about expressing things that are hindering them. And so when I say these things, and fortunately when their manager is in the room or someone who is a leader and they say, yeah, that is a problem and we're trying to address that, and they hear that, it helps them, I think.
And to really, drive home the learning taught in our courses, we also offer a capability called coaching and mentoring, which our clients love. It's where the magic happens, meaning that we take the content taught and learned in the course which is very valuable. It level sets, it baselines, it gets everybody hearing, the same story. And then post-training, our instructors stick around and coach and mentor your team members to drive home that content learned on real work. They get down in the trenches. They're super technical. They're engineers, and they can help you and your team members on real work. And I'm sure Jenna and Byron have some examples to share regarding success stories.
So I've always been pretty glad to see that, because I can see the light bulbs going on when you see a lot of these abstractions like listed in the Agile Manifesto, for example, the principles and values. You hear about terms like simplicity and what does that really mean, and the ability to handle change. But when you are working with someone who is an experienced practitioner of that, and you see just how far down towards simplicity it needs to go to be able to work with high confidence, to be able to get it to a point where the tests that you develop and the code that you develop can really be done with confidence, because there just aren't so many areas of concern anymore. That starts to give them this idea like, okay, well, if we do it this way, we can regularly build working software, and it's not going to be nearly as difficult as before.
And to add to that, another kind of value add to this is that, and this was one of my favorite experiences working with our students. I did some like drop-in times for a class that they wanted to be able to stop by and virtually stop by and get help preparing for the Software Testing Foundations exam. And I was able to give this very targeted guidance and help people work through problems that we didn't have time to fully work through in the class, because there's a lot of people and everybody needs to get all the same content. But in these like little one-on-one or a couple of people with me, we were able to spend like 45 minutes breaking down one problem that they're going to potentially encounter on the exam and talk about different ways to approach it. And here are all the different ways that you can visualize this particular question and this data. And then we talked about, okay, so we've worked on this in class. Now we've worked on how you're going to solve this problem for the exam. But let's talk about where you're really, really going to use this. Because we mentioned that in class, but now they were able to bring these specific examples of, I think I can use this test design technique to set up the test for this particular scenario that I'm testing. Can you help me do that? And I was able to. And that was one of my favorite experiences, was to like really walk somebody through what we do, because I love testing. That's why I do this. And, Byron and I both bring years of experience working in the industry before we started teaching. So we're able to take that and translate it into this material, and then translate it back to how you can take our experience and use it to do your job better, and make your team more successful. That was really cool.
Not just experience, but so much passion too. You guys love to teach. It shows. Those scores and those evals always rock. Students love Byron and Jenna. They do such a great job. They make Sam and I's job very easy because they deliver such a quality learning experience.
I agree. I definitely agree with that.
Something interesting that came up in the Fragile to Agile class that I did for a company is we talked about this idea of doing a retrospective. And normally I do a retrospective kind of on the class. How did things go? But they had brought up a couple of like struggles that they were having. And they were external struggles outside of their team. So I said, well, you know what? Something we would do at a retrospective in a traditional Agile environment is we would bring all of those things up. Said, so instead of doing a retrospective on the class, let's treat this like a real sprint retrospective. Let's talk about these concerns that you're having and these problems you're having a hard time resolving. And so they added a number of like things that they're doing well and things to improve. And we did the normal like voting for what we want to work on. And then we spent a good 30 minutes kind of doing ideation on ways to resolve this one particular item that they really wanted to try and overcome, which was collaborating with another team that they had to work with. And that's really, I was able to facilitate for them something that they're going to do every sprint and really walk them through the process of doing that, and almost treat it more like coaching than teaching, because we really resolved a problem. And I think that those ideas that they came up with, I was able to help them kind of tailor them to make them a little more kind, a little less like direct, but also help them to identify more agile ways to approach fixing the problem, treating them as a stakeholder, understanding the value of collaboration in this relationship that they had with this other team. So I think it really helped them resolve that issue.
You know, for some of the classes that we teach, like for example, the software testing fundamentals, and then some of our agile classes, we touch on topics that are pressing on companies. Like they've been wanting to overhaul a lot of their methodology, and because Jenna and I create an environment where people feel very comfortable about speaking up, and we give people time and space, we have often seen it that they'll say, okay, actually, I'd like to hold up the class for a moment here. This is our students. And some leader amongst the students will say, I'd like to talk on this one for a little bit more with the class. And so it gives them that forum to talk about a number of points that really wouldn't necessarily be available in any other situation. I mean, in the day-to-day work, when else are they going to have a chance to talk all these things through at length? Well, when we have these multi-day classes, this is the optimal time to talk these through. And I'd like to believe that these lead to positive changes for their teams.
And that's one of the big benefits of having some sort of leadership in the class, be it like a test lead or a dev lead or a manager even. They get to experience the same thing the students are experiencing. And it leads to those really good conversations that Byron was mentioning. You know, we can bring up that these are ways to approach your test strategy, or these are methodologies you can use, or these are techniques that you can combine to get to improved quality levels or develop that sense of like shared ownership of quality in teams. And when the leaders get to be part of that conversation and get to see that, it puts the whole team in a better place to start developing those practices as a whole. Instead of somebody coming back and saying, I heard this thing in this class and I think it's really good, to a manager who doesn't have an opportunity to ask questions. Now the manager is there, they hear it as well. They have an opportunity to really start putting the pieces together to improve and mature their processes.
Right, and then they're not just hearing it from one person or two. They're hearing it the whole class saying, yes, we all feel this way. And it starts to come home to them what's really happening in their teams. And building off of that, considering that we are strong proponents of Agile here, we are very pleased whenever we see students come in where it's multiple cross-cutting responsibilities. Like you've got your developers there, your operations, your leadership, your testers, and so on, all in the same room. Now we can really see some magic happening where they're talking and saying, okay, well, I see where the gaps happen between our different teams. And we can talk about how Agile embraces this idea of them being team members, all working together, building a shared understanding and shared vocabulary to talk things through. And then those problems start to go away. It gets to the ideas of root cause. And a lot of the problems are actually a result of those disconnects between teams.
And that really goes to something we talk about, not just in Agile, but just in general in business. We talk about those stages of team development and doing these kinds of shared training experiences where everybody's in the classroom together. You're getting the value of both new information and developing your folks and helping to improve their skills and their experience and their knowledge. But you also get that added benefit of a team building activity. It's not what people usually think of. It's not going to, the high ropes course and doing activities like that. But there's real value in team building in doing shared learning experiences. And there's real value in them creating that shared vocabulary and that group language that Agile is really reliant on.
Yeah. And both Jenna and I are very adamant about having the students, the teams that we are speaking with, highly engaged. We're not going to just drone on at them. We want them to be extremely active participants. And that's what sets us apart, because we are very sympathetic to their situations. And we say, that's a really great idea. Tell me a little bit more about that. And then they don't realize it, but other people had the same questions, the same ideas, and they all start to get involved. And then real learning is taking place and real connections are building.
And we've been there, right? Like we've both been in the industry long enough. We've worked for big companies. We've worked for small companies. We've experienced highly regulated environments. We've experienced less critical environments. So we understand context, and we're able to help tailor based on context for what you do, because we know that every organization has different needs, but there's also some shared things there. We know what it looks like to be in a highly regulated industry, and how do you need to make adjustments to your Agile practices or to the way you test to accommodate that regulation and ensure that you're still meeting it.
Okay, to receive a great, learning experience for all of the attendees, the engagement is so important. Being interactive with your instructor and your team members, so important. As Jenna mentioned, building that community. We work with small groups to large groups for, private virtual trainings. What is your recommendation for the perfect size group? I know that, we've taught groups as large as 30.
If I may start on that one. The perfect size group can vary quite a bit. I think it also depends a lot on the general demeanor of the group. But we often will use technologies like breakout rooms in Zoom to divide up the groups so that they're smaller, so that people aren't concerned about a lot of people listening in all at the same time. Generally speaking, people feel less nervous when they're dealing with a very small group of people that they know well. But I have been in situations where a group of 30 knew each other so well, and they were so comfortable, and they had such a nice sense of community that it really didn't even matter that it was that many people. People were interjecting and bringing up conversation points, and it was very comfortable. So I'd say that there isn't necessarily any one particular ideal group size, but
That's
I'd
great
like
to
to
know.
hear other people's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've done really large groups, like 29, 30 people. I've done smaller groups. I think it depends partly on the class. A foundation level class or like an Agile development class, like a Fragile to Agile, a really large group is okay. We could easily do 25, 30 people in one of those classes, and really everybody would get what they need, especially because we use breakout rooms. I think when we start to get towards some of the more advanced classes where people really need more one-on-one instruction, because some of those classes can get tough, and some of the concepts are really hard. I think having a smaller group, like 10 to 15, is really, really nice in some of those advanced classes, because people get all of the time they need to ask questions and get clarification. especially when we start dealing with things related to code or related to advanced test design techniques and stuff that are really mathematical and kind of hard to get. And I love using breakout rooms, like Byron mentioned. I love to like break people into groups, have them solve problems together. But something I especially love about using those breakout rooms is that we can take a lot of people who are from the same company, but may not be on the same team or working on the same project, and mix them up. So now you've got a bunch of different experiences coming from all different aspects of that business. And they get to share ideas in those breakout rooms and also kind of internally network, because these are people they may have never talked to before, especially if we're talking about a large company that has, 1,000+ employees that they don't necessarily see all their peers on a regular basis. So some interesting relationships and conversations and experiences get shared in those breakouts when we sort of mix up the groups and let them start to meet new people.
Sounds so interactive, just as an in-person training, just it's a great learning experience in our private virtual training courses too.
I agree.
For myself, I hope it was valuable for everyone to hear, how important it is to continue to learn even during these hard times. We are here to help in any way that we can. Our instructors and Sam and myself are just a phone call or email away. Pick our brains.